Welcome to the stage, Laurie Johnson. Laurie is the founder and CEO of Circular Colorado, a nonprofit working to effectively execute circular solutions in Colorado, and the director of Colorado's Circular Economy Development Center. Prior to this, Laurie was the chief operating officer for a local Colorado roll-off hauling company and served as the executive director for Recycle Colorado for 3 years. Outside of Colorado, Laurie served as VP of Client Services for Recycle Bank, and she owned a retail product distribution business in Phoenix for 8 years. She has served on multiple boards in Colorado, including being a founding board member of the Front Range Waste Diversion Board, now Colorado Circular Communities. Laurie holds a BA in Urban Affairs and an MBA in Sustainable Business. Please welcome Laurie Johnson.
Thank you, John. You can advance. Okay, good morning, everybody. Well, welcome to Colorado. I have not been part of the IRA, but I happen to live down the street. So I'm here. Jane found us online. We presented a workshop at a conference in Denver called Circularity. How many of you are local? Any of you? Oh, a few. Okay. This is going to help for as we get started in the conversation. Primarily East Coast? Okay, very good. West? In the middle? Okay, good. A couple of reasons why I asked that. We're going to talk about materials today. And oftentimes when you hear the word circularity, you think people are going to start talking about recycling. Recycling is one small little piece of what we do here in Colorado. And we have a model here that nobody else has across the country that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to figure out this here. So let's go here. So about 4 years ago, I've been in this space for about 15 years all across the country. It's basically materials management. And I got into it because I had a distribution business in Phoenix, a product distribution business, and it kind of killed me where the products came from, how they originated, what you could do with them at the end of life. There was nothing to do with them. And I was like, wow, this is a lot of money we're just throwing away, right? We have these materials that could potentially be put back into new products. So I'm originally from California, sometimes apologetically, depends. I spent 10 years in Phoenix, and I've been here for 10 years. Really, really great environment to work in Colorado, very collaborative. Most people would say, when you talk about environmental in Colorado, like, oh, that state's so green. Well, the trees are green, but nothing else about the state was that way as far as resources went. Bottom 10% of the country as far as resource recovery, general materials, and we really just didn't have any infrastructure. The challenge is here, as you see from this slide, you see a truck and you see manufacturing. We don't attract manufacturers here to date because of transportation. I think a lot of what some of you guys deal with. So to the west of us, a lot of you probably come here to ski, or the Rockies, and they're awesome, except for when you want to truck over them in the winter. If you go to the east and you drive, you just drive and you drive and you drive and you drive. And at $3 a mile, that gets to be cost prohibitive. So I've served on, as they said, a number of boards, ushered a bill through our legislature here that created an enterprise fund. That enterprise fund takes $2 a ton at the landfill for material, a lot of materials excluded, and puts it into an enterprise fund that then grants money to companies, cities, organizations to build infrastructure. From capture to manufacture is our tagline, because first we need to capture the material, but then we need to manufacture it into a new product. So this enterprise fund helps us with all of that infrastructure. The infrastructure to capture it, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, and then most importantly, after that, that's the part you'd call recycling. You know, you capture it instead of throwing it in the dumpster, or maybe you throw it in a dumpster if you're doing construction, and then it goes to a site where they sort it and take out the valuable materials. You have to process it, and you have to process it in a way that then those materials can be used as inputs into a new product, and that's why we're here. We're here to keep the money and the resources in the economy. So that's what Circular Colorado does. Again, our mission, we only do tangible, actual, and measurable projects. What that means to me is we don't sit in a lot of meetings. I started Circular Colorado because here we created this fund, and yet we just had a lot of meetings and nobody actually went and got things done. So you guys, why I'm happy to be here today when Jane reached out is, you guys get things done, right? That's your job. Occasionally you have to go to a conference to get some more education, but you're here to get things done. So we also work, we have a contract with that enterprise fund to create and run a circular economy development center. I'm going to tell you what that is. We work on a regional model. So it's called the CEDC, or you may hear me call it the center for short. It's not a big building. It's a program, essentially, that assists in creating these circular economies. Now, I wish today that I could plug this into AI and it would spit out what I should do with these materials, but it doesn't exist yet for so many of them. So we are boots on the ground trying to stand up the infrastructure and technology to take this material and turn it back into other products. So we work on an 8-state model, 9 if we include North Texas. Anybody here from Texas? I know you are, because I see you. And I used to spend 3 weeks a month in Fort Worth and Dallas for years working on materials. So I'm an honorary Fort Worth citizen is what I like to say. It's a great place to do a lot of really innovative things. And so a lot of our material goes to, at least to North Texas from here. So we work on this model, and it's something I'm hoping that you'll take back if you're in the East, in the Midwest, even on the West Coast, even though we work with those folks, and tell them that, hey, there's some folks in Colorado doing some things to capture these leftover materials or waste materials, leftover supplies, and these things to put back into new products. So you can see the map there. Essentially, it's 8 states, anything that kind of touches us even a little bit, and then the north part of Texas is where we work. And this is what we do. So a big part of what we do is all transportation. So I'd be curious, how much any of you guys work with rail? Like, do you work on bringing products in, right? BNSF, UP, the short lines, all of that. Rail is becoming quickly a really big resource for us. We used to just truck everything. So one big thing that my organization does is works on logistics, right? And we work on a lot of LTL, so less than a truckload, logistics to move these materials to keep their value. Because most of the time in this material world, where you drop the ball, so to speak, is when it comes to the transport. You can capture it, you know what to do with it, but you can't afford to transport it. A lot of what we do is bringing folks together, either from different sectors, inside the same sectors, to say, how much do you have of this? How much do you have of this? How much do you have of this? Can we get this on a truck? Can we get this in a rail car? And can we move it to where it needs to go to be made into a new product? So here in Colorado, we created something called the Circular Transportation Network, something you could create in just about any state. There's a lot of trucks out there backhauling empty, or hauling back empty. You guys have probably heard that term, on a backhaul. So what we did is we took products, so if you're not familiar with Colorado, we run on this front range from like Fort Collins to Pueblo, 80% of the population, and then the rest of the folks are up in the mountains or out in the eastern plains, or far out west in the western slope. So we have products coming out from distribution centers on the front range, going out all across the state, and sometimes other states. But they typically were coming back empty. So we kind of commandeered that system and put a communications piece with it, kind of like maybe a FedEx would do, or a UPS on a more of a consumer level, or on a freight level. And we now pick up material from jobs, from cities, from companies, large retailers that were going to landfill simply because they couldn't afford to transport them, right? So it was too expensive to try to find a home for them, so they were getting dumped. So this circular transportation network brings back all these materials to a transload site, which, if you're not familiar with that term, transload means we are bringing it, in a truck, taking it off a truck, putting it on rail, or consolidating the material and putting it back on another truck. So that's down in Pueblo for us. So transportation logistics is a big part of this. The other thing that we do is we look at solutions for material-specific problems and issues, which I'm going to talk about. And finally, what we're trying to do here in Colorado is build what we call a circular campus. Circular just meaning mostly for the economics, where we co-locate all of these folks in one location to share resources. So utilities, loading docks, technology, forklifts, you name it, so that your material comes in on one end and it can get processed, moved over to a line that will then use it as an input for manufacturing and go out as a product on the back end. So just a quick landscape here. You will find nonprofits doing a lot of this because they tend to have a good reach in the community. We do, as you see here, and really what I want you to see from this slide is we have a main office literally 3 blocks up the way. You guys happen to just land it in our backyard. And then we have satellite offices across the state. So most of you live in states that the landscape, not just the geography of it, but the people, the economics are different right across the state. So here in Colorado, it's very different to be in a rural area or a mountain area than it is to be in the city. You lack the population, obviously. You lack the resources because the infrastructure is not there because you don't have the demand from the population. So we put satellite offices out across the state to keep us apprised of what's going on in each state so that we can help them with the infrastructure. So these are our 4 primary materials that we're working on now. It's not an exhaustive list. And I imagine that it could be some of the stuff you guys are working with, likely not textiles. But we also work with a lot more. So waste tires, something really funny when you were talking about, Chuck was talking earlier about you get your fleet in your truck and you put it into AI. I'm not sure that AI today would know that we have something here called pre-tread, who takes waste tires, grinds that, well, is soon to grind them up because we got them an $11.2 million grant from this fund recently to make their own crumb rubber that they were importing from Indiana. And they make, you know when you drive on the highway and you see the big concrete barriers everywhere? They now make those 100% out of recycled tires. So super cool. So what our organization did was said, okay, we have a manufacturer, they make a great product. So that's the end game, right? They're already there. We've got 7.5 million waste tires a year in Colorado. Big problem. So how do we get these into the barriers? Well, they were missing the processing piece of being able to grind these tires up into what we call crumb rubber. So we work to also get people funding from this enterprise fund. We put together a project, we bring in the people hauling tires, the people selling tires, right? Like Goodyear, Discount Tire, all those folks that are collecting them, and then the processing and the manufacturing to make a final product. Colored HDPE plastic. We work with all plastics. In what you guys are doing, likely what would be the most relevant is we work with a lot of pipe, right? So the recovery of a lot of pipe. Not that easy to transport, can absolutely go into new products. But kind of commandeering that transportation and the cost to recover that is where we work, and then to find the solutions of what products do we want to put that into that, again, have another life after we do that. Our work primarily exists not for just like a one and done. So we capture a material, put it into a product, but we're not trying to put it into a product that we can't do the same thing over again. Textiles, you guys might find this interesting if you know anything about this stuff. It's mostly polymers, right? It's mostly plastics is what you're wearing. And that has risen to from 11% to currently 17% of what goes into every landfill. So you just kind of wrap your head around that. It's a big deal. It's not just the clothes you wear, it's the bedding, it's blankets, right? It's even the fabric on your mattresses. So we are working here on a solution of how do we make textiles what we call here a circular economy. One of the biggest things that you may or may not know is it's very challenging to make any type of garment domestically, and that has to do with dyeing the material. So it's not that hard to take a PET bottle, which some of you have on your desk there, on the table, grind that up, make it into a fiber that you can spin. Then you take that yarn that you spun, you weave it on a water jet loom, which we can do at scale here, but then you have to dye it. So the dyeing is what drove most of the textile industry outside of the US, that and the labor rates. And so we work to say, how can we solve for these things that we can bring that domestic manufacturing back, which makes it easier to close the loop when you're not shipping stuff out. And then finally, clean wood. which I imagine you guys probably work a lot with as well, as I've gotten to know just a little bit about air association. You can mulch it, but that's not really the highest and best use, right? And I don't know about where everybody else here lives, but here we are saturated with mulch because everybody just wants to grind it up or chip it. So we work with technologies that do things like if you have dimensional lumber that all the way down to an 8-inch piece, a production line that can finger join, if you guys know what that is, finger joint this wood and make brand new, just as strong as virgin, 12-foot dimensional pieces of lumber, right? So instead of just mulching it, taking that, and there are gratings for that lumber and putting it back into construction. So just fun to know about. So here's our model. I just want to kind of tell you guys how we go about this, so that if you were to go back and anybody said, oh, what'd you learn? Say, well, wow, I learned that we could actually do stuff with these resources, but you got to get to the right people. Oftentimes it's a nonprofit like us who's out trying to do work in material recovery. Sometimes it's folks in the Department of Energy and other places like that. But there's smaller organizations that you can reach out to that are kind of got their feet on the ground with all of this stuff in the community. So the model for us is it's like a big puzzle. So what we do is people will call us and they're like, hey, I have a problem. Hey, I've got 3 acres of pipe. I don't know what to do with it. I've got all this stuff. I don't want to just throw it away. Or we have this consistent problem with a certain material or product. So the first thing that we do is we explore the challenge, and then we identify the gaps, just like we did with pre-tread. We're like, well, wow, you already can make a product, or we have someone that makes a product, but they need the input. So we figure out where's the gap that we can fill, and then we develop the strategy and look for the partners. So some of you guys would be partners that we would look to oftentimes in utilities and other different, industrial type occupations that are out there building infrastructure and doing things like that. There's a lot of materials involved. And then we organize those players so that, if you like football, then we're like the quarterback. If you hate sports, which I kind of doubt for this group, but if you hate sports, then we're like the nucleus in science. And we just are like the CPU, and we orchestrate all of it for the solution and say, you're good at this, you do this. You're good at this, you do this. So that you have anybody ever come to you and say, hey, we got this great thing we want to do, but what it's going to do is cause you guys to do more work. And you're like, that's great, but I don't have enough space on my plate. So what we do is we take over and run the entire project so that everybody that's in their daily position can do their business and mind their business and not have to have responsibility for organizing everything and everyone, including the financing. Then we execute that solution, and then we manage the project all the way through. So this is kind of just a fun little example when you take a puzzle and you do the puzzle. And either if you do it by yourself, you probably know where all the pieces are. When somebody else comes and helps you, sometimes the pieces get lost, or your dog eats a piece, or whatever happens. All this is a bunch of different pieces that have to be arranged in a certain way. And so what we do, like we did with the waste tires, is we take all the pieces, we look for the pieces that are missing, and then we go and we find them, right? So whether it's an industry, whether it's a specific company, whether it's a certain technology, we deal with all types of technologies, everything from pyrolysis, right, to basic mechanical processing, to chemical processing. So for like textiles, there's something called advanced recycling, and that's where you have certain array of chemicals and a mixture that takes the polymer, which is just a chain of monomers, if you've ever heard anything about plastics, and breaks that back down into the specific monomer. So like sodium, hydrogen, things like that. And you don't have to know a lot about science to just know if you can break those back down, just like you would with Legos, then you could put them into something else and build something new. So the tires is a good example. Electronic waste. I imagine a lot of you, any of you guys deal with e-waste? Yeah, a lot of it. So anybody heard of black mass? Right, good. So black mass is essentially the building block of what you can use as an input to make new electronics, and it's a mechanical recycling or a really high volume grinding of electronic waste and capturing, kind of like in that chemical process of grabbing each one of the metals and the critical minerals out to create something new. So we are just about to bring a company here to Colorado to take this whole process for electronic waste and generate black mass, so that these materials and these products can go back in with the batteries back into new electronic products. So again, that's what we do. If you see this picture here, you see we have manufacturing of electronics, we have retailers, we have consumers, but what we don't have is we don't have, to the extent that we need someone to disassemble all of those, the transportation is really expensive, and that's usually where the value chain breaks, is with the transportation. And we didn't have the material processors. So we went out and we found folks that were doing this. This gentleman's actually out of Houston, just launched his first company out in Australia, and we're gonna put the second one here in Denver to pilot this. What we do in Colorado is we build the model. So we don't have enough population, right? We're not LA, we're not Dallas, we're not New York. So sometimes we can't do it at grandiose scale, but what we do here is we make the model, so that then we can turn around to other parts of the country and say, here's the model, it works at production scale, you can replicate it, you can scale it, and we share that out kind of like open source. Same thing for PET, that's polyethylene, it's like your water bottle that you see there. Big gap here, you need these PET pellets, so plastic pellets, to go back in to make just about anything, another bottle, a shirt, you name it. So we are working here to stand up a PET recycling plant that will take in the plastic bottles that you have and essentially turn out plastic pellets that go into what's called extrusion to make new products. But it's all about what parts we're missing, right, to have this be a full circular economy. And so with that, I just want to give you an overview, and I think we have probably 3 to 5 minutes for some questions. If anybody has a specific material they want to talk about, or just questions about what we're doing here and what you see happening in your region. If not, you can always call me later too. But Jane has a microphone. There's one behind you.
First off, thank you for the presentation. It was really fascinating. So my question pertains to two materials specifically.
Okay.
Porcelain and then pallets. So I work for the utility company in Texas.
Okay.
And we have millions of pounds of porcelain that just gets landfilled, and probably millions of pounds of pallets as well.
Yeah, those are very, very common. So my background, so that you know too, is primarily in construction and demolition waste. And I actually have a fun product we've made. We're making a block and a paver out of recovered gypsum and PETG plastic, so fun to know. So pallets have been in my life for a long, long time. You can always go to rebuild pallets, right? So if they're in decent shape, someone will take them and hopefully rebuild them. We have biochar here. So I don't know if you've ever heard of biochar. Not where you just burn the wood and make charcoal. We have a guy here called Biochar Now, happy to connect you. He's got some plants in Texas as well. That's one of the better uses for pallets too, because with all the metal in there, you don't even need to clean that out. You just shred it up and put it into biochar. You know, we have the maker spaces here where people go, well, I take the pallets and I make furniture, and that's super cool. But you can't do that at scale, right? You have hundreds and thousands of pallets. So unless you have a pallet company, we have one here called Go Green Pallets. They will take in all that pallet waste. They will disassemble. They will use like new stringers, right, for new pallets. They'll take some off. Then they'll chipper, mulch, or shred the other stuff to go like to biochar. So I don't know if that's helpful. One of the biggest challenges is getting the pallets picked up or finding that person. And then for porcelain, Colorado Springs Utilities. Is there anybody here from there? Are you guys still doing the crushing? Do you know? Yep. So they're fantastic. So they take the toilets. You have to be free of the fixtures. And they are crushing it and using it as road base. But you have to have a really robust program. So that's where are you located? Okay. So you have STAR in Dallas, the state of Texas Alliance for Recycling. Reach out to them. I used to sit on that board, actually. Reach out to them, and they will know the folks that might, because that's who's working with the municipalities, and somebody that might be interested in that. There's also grant money in that Dallas area that could potentially, help you stand up a program for that. But I'd reach out to CSU here, Colorado Springs Utilities, and ask them about their program. No, one behind you. You could probably holler and I could hear you.
Hey, thank you for a great pitch. Just wondering, you said that AI could help you, but it doesn't exist yet. If AI could help you, what would you have it do?
It's not that, so AI exists, right? And if you can be as clever as Chuck in what you put into it, I like that'll spit out. The technologies that we need are not often at a place where it even knows that it's out there, because it's not on the internet, right? It's not somewhere that it can grab that information. The other project we have that we're getting ready to kick off in March is an innovation hub, where we take these folks that have a solution already, they have a product, they just can't get from production, like their product's ready and ready to go, but they don't have the money to rent the warehouse, buy the equipment, and do all of this thing to get it to market. So that's where I said, like, AI is great, but it doesn't even know about these solutions that we're like incubating right now. Thank you so much. There's our contact info. Feel free to reach out anytime.